Welcome to Solutions with Courtney Anderson. I am Courtney Anderson, your host and guide for the show. And as always, you can come to CourtneyAnderson.com for more information. So today we have a show in our Management Magicians series. And of course, our Management Magicians series, try saying that 5 times fast, is dedicated to those outstanding, exemplary managers who literally create magic in their work environments. They inspire people at every level of an organization. They leave an organization better than when they joined it in terms of measurable sort of traditional business metrics, and also in terms of their impact they have on other people's lives. People fondly remember our talented, gifted management magicians. They are mourned at their loss. And these are a very special breed of people. Our management magicians are the key to any organizational extraordinary success. So if an organization just wants to, not go out of existence, right, either have financial ruin if they're a for-profit organization, or run out of funding if they're a nonprofit organization, or have such negative political assessment if they're a governmental agency that they're shut down, that's a very different bar than extraordinary success. The organization that goes above and beyond expectations, that has measurable and emotional positive outcomes in the lives of customers, clients, vendors, citizens. The management magician is rare. They're not necessary. You can sort of hobble along in an organization without any management magicians, but when we have a management magician, we want to keep them. And one of the things that we do in this program is, we salute them, because it's again, very rare that we have management magicians. The other thing is we want to do everything in our power to share some of the tools, techniques, and tips, the processes that our management magicians utilize. How do they do it? Because we may have aspiring management magicians out there. We may have people who are managers, but they're not yet feeling the magic, and they want to learn how to do so. So that's a lot of what we're doing. This is a very interesting episode. The episode topic is superstars, how to make them stay and not burn out. So we are talking about superstars, and I just love it. I love the idea, right? So much of what we do in all of my programs, we talk about surpassing our goals. We talk a lot about deciding kind of where we want to calibrate our output and what our expectations are in life. If it's sort of what's the bare minimum, what's a little bit more than that, and then what's extraordinary. And so our superstars are by definition the super. They are up there aiming for the best and achieving rare outcomes that are very positive. And so they exist. Again, they are not naturally evenly distributed throughout organizations just sort of by random chance. And what we're doing here specifically is we're not at all addressing how to necessarily get a superstar, get the superstar population started. That's a very different question, and we've got other programs on that. This is about, I'm a management magician. I have a superstar, right? I already have them. Maybe I have one, maybe I have a whole bunch. We're dealing with here, how do I make them stay here at this organization? Retention, right? I don't want them to leave, and I want them to stay, but I want them to stay and be sane and hopefully satisfied while they're here. I don't want them to burn out. So in the show notes, I shared that basically you typically have 3 big picture options with a superstar, right? 1, they burn out. 2, they leave. Or 3, they'll stay. But they're staying, and they're staying in a situation where they're not burning out and they're not waiting to leave. And that would pretty much require them to be, satisfied and sane. So the issue, big picture, is you're a management magician. You have a superstar. Awesome. Or a few. How do you keep them here at this organization and not take their superstar talents and go somewhere else, especially to a competitor, or become a competitor, right? Start their own organization. And how do I stop them from burning out? So let's clarify a couple of things. Burnout. According to the Merriam-Webster Dictionary, burnout is the condition of someone who has become very physically and emotionally tired after doing a difficult job for a long time. So the superstar, and some people want to debate and argue, it's fascinating. I've spent almost 16 years going around the world to different organizations, from the little teeniest small startup with a handful of people up to the some of the largest organizations in the world in terms of either revenue and or size. Some places I work with have literally millions of employees. So wow. Here we are looking at this issue of superstars. I'm putting aside and tabling the issue in debate of whether or not they exist, because I have a lot of people who say, I don't believe superstars exist. I'm also leaving aside the issue of whether or not how someone becomes a superstar. So I'm putting forward the assertion that they do exist. I'm also putting forward, secondly, the assertion that I'm not even going to touch the question in this show of how someone becomes a superstar. And that's the whole thing about, is it sort of inherent in the person, right? Are they sort of a combination of either genes and environment that they are that way, a superstar? Or can I just sort of take anybody and make them a superstar? Can I train people and just sort of convert non-superstars into superstars? That's a whole other issue. I tend to argue in my programs that most of the time, the superstar is sort of internally comes that way. They have the tendencies and the habits already built in. And it's possible that you can take somebody who has maybe just a few of these sort of proclivities and tendencies internally, and then sort of put them in a really positive environment with lots of support and mentoring and feedback, and then that'll give them a fertile ground to develop the rest of the superstar traits and behaviors that they'll need. So that's certainly possible. I don't concur that you can just take somebody that has none of the superstar traits, the internal locus of control, self-discipline, organization, the high personal standards of excellence, intellectual curiosity, high standards of integrity. I don't think you can, I put this in all of my programs, I don't think you can just take somebody who has none of these traits and plant them in, the greatest environment in the world with everything you can imagine, mentoring and tutoring and, feedback and everything, and sort of hope it sort of grows, that'll be enough for them to sort of by osmosis, I guess, become the superstars. I in every program, and I've been pretty consistent on this, yet I haven't seen evidence of that. So again, someone can have a whole bunch of the traits, a superstar, be totally ready to go. They're already fully formed. They could have just a few of the traits, but with the right environment where those are supported and nurtured, those existing traits will sort of take root, and then, of course, they will be able to develop and mature into a full superstar. Totally believe that. My argument, though, is those people already have, although they may have different quantities of traits, superstar traits inherent, they already have them. And again, I don't believe that you can just sort of take anyone and convert them, train them, mold them into this superstar when they don't have any of those. They didn't come to you with any of the internal traits, behaviors. So, tabling those issues, we're with our management magicians who, again, we always celebrate. Thank you. You are what makes extraordinary organizations extraordinary. Leadership and the also day-to-day management come together in a beautiful management magician, right? So leadership is the vision, big picture, and then the manager is sort of the day-to-day, getting it done in this moment with what I have, handling crises. A management magician melds those, right? The management magician isn't just that short-term day-to-day, but they also possess leadership and vision. And they're able to emphasize which of those areas they need to focus on depending on what's happening, right? So if it's an issue where, oh my goodness, we have an immediate crisis right now, my management magician's on it, dealing with it, focused. If we're having a period where it's not overwhelming in terms of the immediate, right in front of us issues, my management magician is always thinking long-term and integrating the solutions that are deployed on the ground with the bigger picture leadership vision issues. So yay, management magicians. I have a superstar, right? So again, I have them. I want to make them stay. How do I make them stay? I don't want them to leave. Please don't leave me. Don't leave me, superstar. But I don't want you to stay and then burn out. Again, burnout, they're just unable. They hit the wall, right? That's what, sort of an athletic terminology. They just can't do it any longer. And it's not going to do me any good to keep them here. They stay, like they're physically still working in my facility or on my contracts, but they're unable to perform any longer. Because now, once they burn out, they're not a superstar. They might not even be able to function. Some people physically burn out. Their body gives up on them and they're hospitalized, or they may have a heart attack or something. So I haven't won, and they may mentally, emotionally, psychologically break down. So again, they're unable to to do all these superstar work things. So both of those are lose. I don't want them to burn out. One, it's just I don't want anybody to burn out. I would argue ethically, just as a person, that what a horrible thing, right? Somebody has the idea with the burnout is the poor person has taken on so much, right? So they have sort of their plate and what they're supposed to do every day, and then they put so much on there, or they have so much that they're trying to do at such a high standard for such a sustained amount of time that at some point they've used up all their resources. There's just nothing left, and so that literally, so like a candle, it burns out. We've used up all the wick. There's nothing in them. That's why they have often, a really negative physical and or emotional, psychological result, because they gave it all. And we're, to a certain extent, humans, our bodies, machines, to a certain extent. It's amazing. Sometimes I stop and think about that, right? That heart just keeps going. Wow. And it's the same one we've had, right? Unless we get to a point where hopefully we're eligible and we need another one, and we can get another one and get a transplant and it not be rejected. But we need it to go. We need it to keep us moving, breathing, functioning. So burnout is a lose-lose. I don't want burnout. Some people who are superstars, before they totally burn out, they're just going to go somewhere else, and they're constantly looking to go somewhere else. So they may still be a superstar. I'm a management magician. I might see them thinking, wow, look at all that performance, right? It's outstanding. But the reality is they're looking for an exit, and as soon as they find it, they're going to leave with all of their knowledge and all of their skill sets, and I don't want that either. And I put a quote in the show notes from the Harvard Business Review. Is a little article talking about superstars, and it has some quotes, and it says the direct benefits of a superstar can be substantial, but it's also important to consider how the hire will affect other employees' productivity. Researchers found that the superstar's impact on recruiting was far and away the more significant driver of improved organizational productivity. So it's an article, and I included the link that if you look at, and basically they went and tried to, we have to measure it, right? I need data. And so they went and they measured in an academic department, the top 90% and above in terms of publication citations. And then I'm going to look and measure and see what their impact is in terms of productivity, output, and sort of the penumbra, right? That's from law school, right? The idea that they sort of have also this sort of far-reaching beyond their own individual direct impact, that it impacts hires, and that's what the Harvard Business Review article is talking about. So I want the superstar for a whole bunch of reasons. One, I want them because of what they themselves directly do, right? Which is awesome. And I also want them because of the impact they have on other people's productivity. And I also want them, and current existing right? Other team members. And I also want them because look at the impact they'll have on my future recruiting of potentially other superstars. So look at this. It's like a win-win-win. They can do, in terms of their productivity and their output, such an extraordinary amount, depending on what your industry is, more or better than their peers. On top of that, they also raise the performance of their peers, potentially, and they can also potentially set up an environment where I can go out and get more superstars, which would be even better. So big picture, and we're having, of course, this discussion in light of the historical, up and downs of the global economic issues. And so certainly 2008 period, we had a global economic, some people call it a crisis. But basically, one of the things that I see as the aftermath is that when you look at the recovery from that crisis, there's just a lot of discussion about sort of this jobless recovery in many parts of the world. And there is a lot to that, obviously. But one of the things that underpins the importance of this show, right, of my superstars, is the idea is this. In many organizations, you have the superstar, right? So the superstar, let's say that my one superstar equals the output of 10 other non-superstars, right? So they're that fast, they're that good, their sales are that high, whatever. So that one superstar's output directly equals 10 other sort of average or bare minimum team members. And so what happened when the economy tightened and there was so much stress, right? And a lot of in the financial sector literally went through stress tests. So a lot of organizations roughly looked at the calculation and thought, look, I can get one superstar. They already were doing the work of like 10 other people. I'll just let go of the other 10 people, and I won't hire them back. So my superstar is, they're chugging along. They're doing a lot of work. And so when the economy starts to rebound and my business or a governmental agency is doing better, I'm not going to go out and rehire those other people because I don't need them, right? And sort of big picture, that's what's happening. So it's actually awesome. It's always been awesome to be a superstar. There have been barriers to some people's natural superstar talents being able to shine based on, political or cultural, societal issues, gender, tribal affiliation, ethnicity, religion, stuff like that. But beyond those issues, if those barriers are lowered, then I'm going to be in a good position because, supply and demand, I'm a superstar, I'm rare. And I can do what a lot of part of what makes me a superstar is my measurement of how much more I can do or better than my peers. That's why I'm a superstar. So the organization that has and retains the sane and satisfied and healthy and happy superstar has a huge advantage over those who don't have any superstars or who get some and then they leave, or they get some and then they burn out. Because, again, that superstar is able to do so much more than these other non-superstar producers. And my issue as a manager, I want my superstar on a team. Now, there are people who are managers, but they are not management magicians. They're just management in name only. So there's some people who have their own insecurities. There are some people who put in management jobs, but they're so insecure that they literally will think things like, well, I don't want anybody else to do a better job than I am. They'll look better than I look. And they'll go out and they'll intentionally hire people that they think are not as talented as they are, which is so counterproductive, right? Literally, it cheats the organization. Whether it's a for-profit or non-profit or government entity, you're cheating them because you're going out and you're intentionally hiring people that aren't awesome because you don't want awesome people because you're jealous of them or intimidated by them or whatever. So there's a whole bunch of other programs that I do about don't ever let those people become any type of manager at any level because they'll destroy a unit or a department or an organization if they're allowed to, right, go high enough because this paranoia, insecurity, all these problems. Those people I'm not talking about because we're talking about management magicians. Management magicians, of course, are healthy, confident people. They understand that nobody knows everything. They are proud of who they are. They're continually expanding their own personal and professional horizons, and they're excited and happy to be around a superstar, not intimidated and depressed and jealous. So my management magician has the superstar. Yay! How do I keep them? This is very big picture. I said earlier that let's say that my superstar does the work of 10 of my non-superstars. And I shared that during some of what some places are seeing in the world, that the economy is coming back, or an organization is financially doing equal to or better than they were before, but nobody's hiring, is that organizations are realizing I don't need to go pad that department with that many people, because I went lean, right? I cut down numbers of people, and yet my productivity and efficiencies either remain the same or it's gotten better. So people think, well, I don't need to go back and hire those extra people. They were just sort of, a drag on my overhead. They were just taking up a lot of space, but, with either technology improvements or whatever, they weren't necessary for me to achieve the same outputs or better than I wanted. Okay. I shared earlier that my argument is that many of the traits, if not the majority or all, of the superstar are already in them, whether it's genes, environment, both, whatever. They come that way to the organization. And so the drawback, there are a ton of drawbacks, but the drawback to that is that superstar doesn't know how to not work that way. You can't, my argument is the same way, if you go to a superstar and say, look, I just want you to be like a bare minimum worker. I don't want you to care about the quality of what you do. I don't want you to care about, being excellent or being the best. I don't want any of that. I just want you to turn all that off and just sort of literally do the least possible. All of the people that I've ever witnessed, worked with, read about, studied, and most of the research shows they don't know how to do that. You can't convert the superstar into the non-performer, because they're kind of wired that way to care. They're wired to make it right. They're wired that if you give them a goal and a task, then they're going to meet that and exceed it, right? They want to be awesome. Now, sometimes it's driven by other things. Sometimes it's driven by, they have a disapproving parent or whatever, but they're built that way, and they don't know how to not care, which is what causes them the stress. We talk about the burnout and the sanity. You put somebody who's a superstar in an environment and you do a couple of things, you're going to make them leave. One, you surround them with a whole bunch of people who not only are not superstars, they don't even care. The superstar doesn't mind working at their own pace, right? That's kind of why their numbers are so off the chart. But that's sort of either natural, or it's mostly natural and then it's exacerbated by, some goal. They want to have salesperson of the year, they want to, get tenure or whatever. So they're going to drive themselves. That's why their numbers are so atypically higher than average. Everybody else has those same environmental options too, but they just aren't driven to that level. The superstar is. They don't mind working at that level because they set it. It's not like you go to the superstar and say, here's the crazy over the top goal I want you to meet. They will exceed that. That's on their own. They don't have, their ceiling is either it doesn't exist at all in their mind, or whatever it is you tell them is the minimum, they feel like there is not even, they'll do that way beyond that though. Their goal is to be excellent or the best or whatever. So you can't convert them into not caring, and if you surround them with people who don't care and have no discernible, contribution, it will drive them crazy. And one of the things that will foster the burnout or them leaving is feeling like I'm surrounded by this, and in fact that there's people that they're surrounded by actually become impediments, right? Like they're slowing them down. They're trying to get it done. It's it's awesome, and if someone wants to sit and have some kind of meeting or talk to them or ask them 8 million questions, then it's slowing them down. So they're just getting more burnout. Their time is being burned. And they become more stressed out and angry. You must surround the superstar with either non-superstars who are very dedicated. They're hard workers. They may not have the whatever specific talents or skills to get them to the superstar level, but they do work hard. They're always on time and early. They read everything. They're trying their best, right? The effort, the dedication, the tenacity. That's okay. Ideally, you want to surround superstars with other superstars, which is why the Harvard Business Review article was saying that's what happens. Superstars want to be around other superstars. It gives them somebody to play with, meaning they have somebody at their level that they can then compete with. If you're a great, athlete, there's nothing more exciting than playing up with that team with that other great athlete, because it's a challenge. If you're just playing all these teams that there's nobody even near your level, then at a point it's boring, and then it makes you stressed out and kind of unhappy. So the superstar ideally wants other superstars, collaborators, maybe even collaborator/rivals, whatever. But that gives them something where they feel that it's a challenge, it's exciting, it's interesting. If you can't find superstars, which are hard because they're rare, then you at least need to surround them with hard workers. So the superstar won't get stressed out if they feel like the other people are dependable, reliable, or dedicated. They'll understand maybe they have limitations, whatever their contributions may be based on skill sets or whatever, but they'll feel like they can trust them. If you put the superstar again around people who don't have either of those, they're not superstars themselves, and they don't even really care. They ambivalent, sort of bare minimum worker. They're late, they make excuses. Not only do they not perform, but they have no interest in it. They're completely apathetic. They could care less if anything's done. They could care less if it's grammatically correct. They just don't care. That is the number one quickest way to get rid of the superstar. They're out the door as fast as they can go. And I am not lying. They're going to run because it's such a negative environment for them, and it's so stressful. The other situation is where, like we said, the superstar, let's say, does the work of 10 people. So you leave them there, doing the work of 10 people. If they can sustain that and it makes them happy, fine. But this is where, again, poorly skilled people in management positions who are not management magicians will do this. They'll say, oh, okay, I see that my superstar is handling, the work the other 10 people have done. No problem. They seem satisfied, sane. I don't have another superstar for them right now to partner or be, working with, but they seem okay, like they're handling everything. But then that person thinks, well, wouldn't it be better, even more, cost effective if I could take my superstar and have them handle the work of 15 people, right? And so you just start piling more on. Again, this is disastrous, and it's so counterproductive and short-sighted. Look, the problem is that superstar does not know how. We just talked about this, to be the sort of bare minimum or less than bare minimum apathetic. They don't know how to do that, not care, right? So when you start notching it up, right, and asking them to do the work from 10 people to 11 to 12, they will keep trying to keep up with it because they're used to, remember, often in their mind there's no ceiling, right? So they're trying to just do it better, faster, more interesting, and they will try to absorb when you keep putting more, into their system. They'll keep trying to do the same level. But at some point, it's just sort of the math of it. At some point, you're going to put so much into their system, they're not going to be able to maintain the same caliber of output. They're going to have to either start to have a quality suffer. They're going to have to start cutting corners because at some point they hit a max too. Unless you're going to do something where you give them more time, you're going to have to change something else in the parameter to allow them to have that same feeling they get when they feel like they're doing a good job. Their standards are different than other people's, but it's basically the same thing. They're so driven to do their best. If they feel like they're doing best, it calms them down and makes them feel good. If they feel like they didn't do a good job, it does not matter what anybody else says. It doesn't matter if they won, salesperson of the century. It doesn't matter if somebody else like that was the greatest ever. If they feel like it wasn't what they feel they should have done or could have done, they're upset with themselves. That's internal, and you can't do anything with it. So if you go and you start piling on more work and saying instead of doing 10 people, do 15 or 20, they'll keep trying to do it and maintain all the other parameters, right? With time, turnaround, quality, whatever. At some point, it's going to break down because you got to either change something else, give them more time, and then they can handle more. But if you keep pushing, more work on them, at some point they're going to start to feel like they can't meet their standard. And if they can't meet their standard, I don't care what you as a manager think, what anybody else thinks as a peer, what the leaders of the organization think, what the customers think. It's all internal for them. Not all, but mostly. So if they start to feel like, whatever the number is, let's say it's 16 people, they start to feel like, oh my gosh, it's not like as good as it could be because it's too much, and I can't do it within this amount of time or whatever. Then they start to turn on themselves. They get depressed or upset or angry or frustrated or stressed out, and they're going to start doing the same two things we talked about, either looking for an exit to go work somewhere else, or they're going to burn out, which is the same thing we just said you're trying to avoid. So how do you keep them and not have them burn out? Either you calibrate the level that they seem, and not just seem, but you have to ask them, because usually they're pretty assertive. Are you okay with the work level? What do you think? Sometimes they'll say to you, I'm a little bored. I'm handling work of 10 people, but I still feel like I, plenty other time. Is there any other challenge you can give me? Remember, the superstar always comes to you and asks you, is there more than I can do? Is there another challenge? Is there anything that I can do to grow? Because the superstar is always focused on how can it, the next thing, how can they learn something new? What can they contribute more? Like, that's what they're all about, the growth part of it. So if you have confirmation based on their performance, their feedback, and observation, healthy, ask them about, their life outside of work, make sure they're making a balance, then you must leave it at that level. You can't go add more on top of it. You can't go from 10, 15, 20 people because they're going to hit their wall, and when they do, or when they start to get close to it, they're going to start looking for exits, or they'll just leave, or they're going to burn out. You don't want either of those. So you can't pile more on. That's point one. Point two is, if you realize you can't pile more on at a certain point, you got to surround them with more resources. So they're going to be, if you have a business where it can be more technology, that's fine. If you need more people, great, but we already talked about the answer. You cannot bring other people in there who are not superstars and do not have a very strong work ethic. Again, the superstar is most excited, happy with other superstars. If you can't relocate, because they're hard to do, the other superstars right now, then you must provide support for the superstar with people who are incredibly dedicated, who their skill level may not be as high, but they are workers. And then the superstar knows they can count on them. And the superstar knows that they actually will be helpful. The superstar wants to work with other people. And the challenge is if other people become impediments to it, they get stressed out because somebody doesn't understand what they're doing, the person, was late, the person was dishonest about what they said they would turn in, the person didn't show up, the person, didn't understand it and had, so much, 15,000 questions that then slow the superstar down, then the superstar feels like they're going to keep going back to, I'll just do it myself. The reality is at some point they can't. They're going to get saturated. They can't do it themselves. They need help. You must surround them, again, with a talented, dedicated, hardworking support team that they can trust, and then they can delegate work out that person can do to a certain level that the superstar is happy and is awesome, and then they can sort of coordinate, and then it'll give you the better outcome you want in terms of efficiency, productivity. Eventually, over time, because the superstar stays with you, then it's going to be enticing because, remember, the superstars ideally want to be with other superstars. So the reason why the recruiting issue that the Harvard Business Review referred to is so powerful is because once there's an awareness that you have superstars where you are, then other superstars want to come be there. So they just, they're attracted to it. So that's why it's so effective in recruiting. So how do you do it? It's actually pretty simple. You're the management magician. You feel good about yourself. You're confident. You're well-rounded. You're healthy. You're practicing joyful art of business. You're not jealous or have any other type of mental or emotional or psychological challenge that prevents you from working and being proud and happy to support and help your superstar. Your superstar needs either to have other people around them who are incredibly dedicated, reliable, hardworking, tenacious that they can then trust, or they need to have other superstars. There's no other option. Once they're working at capacity, you can't pile more on unless you start changing parameters so that they can meet the same quality level. They can do more work if you give more time or you give them more tools. They can't do it in the same time frame without the quality suffering. That makes the superstar so uncomfortable they will again leave and or burn out. So I've got my superstar. They seem happy, comfortable, sane. The productivity is awesome. I've confirmed they're comfortable. I would not go pile anything on more. I would go ask the superstar, how do you feel? Do you feel challenged enough? Is there anything, would you be open to considering adding on another project or adding on this? Ask them. Remember, they want to do where they feel is their best. And you need to remember the superstar will often say yes to everything because they don't know where their ceiling is. So they'll think they can do it and they do so much, everything else, but they don't know because they've never hit a wall. They've never hit a limit. So you want to be careful because, remember, we don't want to burn our superstar out. It's the worst thing that can happen. I actually think the burnout, just because the toll it takes on the human, is worse, obviously, than them leaving, right? So I want to calibrate it. I would actually not change the work level right now, right? And if you do, I'd just slightly, 5% more maybe, and see how they handle it. And then either leave them alone as they are with the resources they have. If they're doing it and they're fine, then great. You don't need to bring other people, because the other people that aren't a benefit stresses out the superstar. If the superstar, though, you feel like you do need to bring them support, or you've got to increase your output expectations, so you need more support, you must bring in the most reliable, trustworthy, timely, organized, dedicated. They don't have to have great skills, but they have to have all of that. You cannot bring anybody apathetic into that system. The superstar just can't tolerate it. It just really, really is such a conflict for the superstar. They don't understand why their person is like that, and it is very hard for them. So ideally, over time, I'm going to add the dedicated, tenacious worker, and then I'm going to set my environment for my superstar to continue to thrive, and that is going to attract, right, like honey, right? Here comes a new superstar. They're so excited, and I'm going to recruit them because they are going to want to be with my other superstars. I've created the environment for superstar success. Thank you for joining me, and as always, you can come to CourtneyAnderson.com.